Ще продължим с интервенцията на куратора Pierre Bal-Blanc, която всъщност ще е на английски, понеже в крайна сметка ще е на английски, за да може да има просто някакси по-естествена дискусия между нас. Иска да попитам, има ли в публиката някой, за който би трябвало да би имало нужда от превод от английски, или всички са окей с това? Окей. Ако имате някакви въпроси или нещо не е ясно, просто бих могъл да спра за секунда, за да направя превод на български, да кажем, в някой фрагмент. So, we are going to start our discussion with Pierre Bal-Blanc, curator, independent curator, who was also a director of CAC Bretigny, the Contemporary Art Center in Bretigny, for between 2003 and 2014. And presently, Pierre, you had worked since many years now on the current edition of Documenta in Athens and Kassel. As you all know, Documenta is a very large event for contemporary art, which happens every 5 years, typically in Kassel, usually in Kassel, and for the first time, and maybe a single occasion, it is also in Athens. So maybe since this is the actuality, let's say, the Documenta, we could start our discussion maybe with this event. And the reason I was interested in inviting you to discuss with Bulgarian audience, besides the fact that Bulgaria and Greece are very close, it was also because of this exhibition, because, well, meaning in the project I have tried to connect the site to its history and its specifics. And this is something that I think is very typical for the way you work, to consider the context, and maybe that would be my first question. How did you take into account the context in Athens, in Greece, and in the specific sites?
Okay. Yes, I work, in fact, yes, as a curator in relation with the place where I'm enunciate the project, where the enunciation space, or the space from which we are kind of speaking. So an exhibition is, I like the way, Marie, you express the paradoxical space. I mean, in matter of films, it could be also in matter of exhibition. I think exhibition is also a paradoxical space in which there is a kind of combination of continuity with reality and isolation of the reality. That's the paradox. It's to be in a way included in the everyday life, but also isolated from the everyday life. So exhibition has this way to propose a space in which something is expressed in relation with reality, but also in abstraction with reality. So films are kind of the same way. I mean, we talk about medium, basically, in general, medium that provide a continuum, I would say. And this relation between continuity and discontinuity is something that I was all along my practice as curator and I'm still very concerned and interested about. It's also crossing some theoretical question, and for example, Bertolt Brecht has given a kind of very precise theory about the discontinuity and the continuity in matter of theater, and how he was using, for example, the way to discontinue the situation in a theater play. I think it is something that also is common music, and in music the same is appearing. There is process of continuity, and suddenly interferences of cutting or scratching. So, and so to come back to the initial question, the context and the space in which something start to be organized is a key element. And how you did yourself here to consider the location, the space as an object, basically. So this building is a kind of object in which we enter, and is basically the first object of the exhibition. And then something happened inside, and the combination of intervention provided by the artist are part of this play. To try to give a kind of a comparison with Documenta, it's something that it's also historically quite identified in the practice of curator and of exhibition making. So when Adam Szymczyk invited me to join the team of Documenta, he himself expressed also something very important about the question of the context of Documenta itself. So Documenta has been initiated in the 50s in Kassel after the war as a kind of initiative to reconstruct culture, and after the collapse of the war, and after that the country was totally destroyed. So it was a way to reconstruct a kind of art context in Kassel. And in the center of at that time the West Germany, because Documenta has finally appeared when the Germany was divided, and the history of Documenta is very close to the history of Germany, but is also exceeding this history, because it became a very key moment for the international scene of art, and side to the Venice Biennale, every 5 years it became a very predominant event for international contemporary art. But differently than Venice, which is really much more based on international national representation, because it's first of all based on the national pavilion, and then the international exhibition came to give another level of this event. This exhibition is in Venice is quite strongly related to the nation state and nation notion of art, and also to the commercial sustainability of art through galleries. So in Venice, the combination of the institution and the market is quite predominant, and it is a very important rendezvous of both the market and the national culture policy, I would say. And Documenta differently has been dissociate from this kind of two, I would say, strong frame for culture, the public institution and the market. Documenta try to be a bit independent and find a way in between, not to be in any way related to national policy of any country, even Germany, because they immediately had a kind of distance about Germany itself, even if it's happened in Germany. And with the market, there were some very key documenta in which the market tried to influence strongly the exhibition, and the Documenta fifth was one of these documenta where a fight happened with a big collector, big gallerist, and finally they found a way to emancipate it by the galleries. So basically, Documenta found a position in which every 5 years we try, the aim is to try to give a kind of alternative view of the art at the global level. So it became at the global level because it was not originally the case. It was much more Western side of the art, and then more and more, and there is different K documentas that open to the global to now, which is really fully the case. And in this Documenta history, Adam Szymczyk, so it's the artistic director, has chosen to reconsider the framework of Documenta strongly in proposing to move to Athens for basically the half part of the project, because it was really think to be something based on 2 locations at the same time, and not a side project, not a parallel project, but really something which work on a simultaneous presence in 2 geographical locations. So, but that move to Athens has a very strong reason into the history of Documenta itself, because starting to thinking about the context of Documenta and about Germany, it's starting to think about what Germany, how Germany has built her own nation on the reference of Greece, and the move to Athens is first try to reconsider the history of Germany and deconstruct a little bit the archetype of this history. So this has to be seen as also very linked to. It's not we choose Athens for. Like that, it's also it's not Athens. It could be Madrid. No, it's Athens because of the strong connection between Germany and Greece in terms of history, and also because of the situation in Europe at the moment of 2013. Because when he decided to move to Athens, it was not. At that level, the crisis was not so predominant. So it's also an intuition that something should be done and also expressed from a south view about Europe, first of all, and much more globally about the relation between south and north. In comparison with what's happened previously in the other Documenta, which was much more east and west.
Documenta is originally a political project, or socio-political in a way, as a way to heal the wounds of the Second World War, still in a divided world, because it was still the opposition between East and West. And I think now by shifting half of the project in Athens, it acquires another political dimension, which is shifting an event that happens since 60 years, I think, in Germany, something like this. And it's the first time it happens outside. I mean, there were attempts, the 2012 edition, there were also other sites, but it was on a much smaller scale. And was this secondary political dimension, which is a project that originated in Germany and is shown in Athens. How was it received locally in Athens, knowing, of course, the background of the crisis and a certain degree of animosity between the two countries? I mean, did you anticipate that? What did you do to prevent or to deal with that political background of the project?
Moving to Athens, it's trying to redefine what is politics. Politics is a decision of organization, it's a decision of organizing and making a movement. It's a really performative in a way. To have been moved in this direction was really political, that's true. But it's something that is addressed either to Germany and to Greece at the same time. So the institution, the GmbH, the company, I would say, the Documenta company, received this proposal as something that is very problematic because for sure the budget, the funders of Documenta are the city of Kassel, the region of Hessen, the Germany state. So it's very difficult to admit that you will spend money from this. From the German tax to Germany, to Athens and to Greece.
Robin Hood.
It is a kind of forcing a situation, and this was a very strong way to address what is exactly Documenta. Is it something related to a service given to the city of Kassel, the region and the state, and in that regards we have to fulfill the expectation of this political institution, or is it something different and the aim of that manifestation is much more oriented to the content and thinking an idea which is isolated or at least protected from interest. So this addresses exactly this question, but in both sides, that's also what it's not eventually obvious at the first moment, because it is addressing this to the German and addressing this to the Greek. Because the Greek also look a German company arriving in Greece making his project and were sometimes suspicious about what this German company was doing. But I and the artistic director and the team organized around this project doesn't feel German under the service of the state of Germany. We are hired by a project that pretend to produce a kind of idea, a kind of situation in matter of culture and art that has to be disconnect with special interest. So this way to address both to Germany and Greece a kind of necessity to to be independent of this interest was a key thing. So but we have to, for sure, on both sides, to argue, to explain, and to behave accordingly in order that the one who support and the one who host help us. So, but this is important to clarify, because we can sometimes not understand how much subtle is the position of the artistic direction and the curatorial team, but also extensively then by the artist, because we are forming a group working, and then this is difficult to reduce to nation, or to reduce to nationality first. So that's why also Paul Preciado used this expression to say that a Documenta is is in exile in a way. So has no national appartenance. So and that's what is important to keep in this project. Oh, but what was very important for sure is, and it's part of the statement proposed by Adam Szymczyk, it's to be hosted by the city. And these two positions, so one which is based on hosting people, hosting artists, hosting audience in castle, was simultaneously also an experience to be host in Athens. So these two positions, to be the host and to be the one who hosts, are very important for our way to conceive the exhibition, because you are not constructing here in any circumstance, and that's why I talk about the importance of the context and the space of enunciation of a project. When you are the host and you host some content or some activity, it depends. You are very much influenced by the place and the space where you are doing this project. So both in both locations, the process has transformed considerably the situation in Kassel first, because we conceive mostly the project from Athens. So the way to also reform or go further the previous Documenta in Kassel was to leave the context and to come back. And to leave the context Kassel, creating another context, Athens, in which we conceive the project and returning to Kassel in the second phase. So this is extremely important in the way you try to conturn the very problematic of every institution, which at some point reduce progressively the possibility of experimentation. Every institution basically start with a very open frame, open mode, and step after step reduce the the space of experimentation by habit, by organization, by so the way to exceed or to escape the very dominant organization of Documenta was to basically leave from the ground of Documenta and recreating a new framework elsewhere and come back after.
Which is, I suppose, the subtitle of the exhibition, Learning from Athens, because the chronologically in Athens was the first, the Documenta opened first in Athens because both sites are not simultaneous, but they overlap over a certain period of time. And I think this is very interesting decision to do it on two sites with the, if I understood correctly, with the same artist who proposed different or similar works on the two sites in Athens and in Kassel. And it looks to me a little bit like a scientific experiment which you conduct in different contexts, in different settings, and then you get different results. Accordingly, I just was curious to know what the same artist or similar works provoked in Athens, and was it different from Kassel? I mean, what was learned
For sure,
from...
but it's not just reduced to the artworks or it's also about all the experience by ourselves, and by the audience, basically also. So what really is interesting is that we had the same process of work in Athens, in Kassel, but the context changed considerably the way it appeared and the way it was also produced. So that's a unique experience to really estimate how much a context is influential in the experience, in the work, in the production. So for some of the works, they are based to be in two parts, one part in Athens, one part in Kassel, or some other are the same, or some are sometimes two different pieces. So the large spectrum of possibility given by this experience, this framework, also propose a very complex experience for the visitor as well. So it's something which really provide a polyphony of possibilities. And one more time to take what Marie talked about in terms of producing storytelling or narratives. It's very interesting to take this instance because I really think about the labels. For example, when you were talking about the storytelling, it reminded me this question of labels in the exhibition. It's like this storytelling. It's really a kind of way to reduce considerably the capacity of the work itself to produce content and to be rich in terms of giving a lot of possibilities. If you produce an exhibition which is given to the audience with labels that invite you to look at the work in a very reduced way, you really close considerably the entire project. And this we try to really not go in this way, but instead to really offer a very rich, large spectrum of possibilities to have your own journey in the exhibition. And there is no one narrative in this Documenta. There is so many as you can build yourself. So there is for sure tendencies, there is, offers given by the context or by a group, some ensembles of works, but these are letting the viewers able to construct his own journey into the exhibition. So this is something that is close to any experimentation in matter of writing or composing, and that was also in Soleil Politique, the previous exhibition I made in Bolzano in Italy, something that was inspired by a music score and music composition, who are giving this methodology of how to invite users to become producers of their own content.
You just spoke again about scores and about discontinuity and this question of continuity in music and by extension in exhibitions. And when one sees even maybe a map of the Documenta in Casso or in Athens, it's a different picture in a way. I think because, as you said, the Documenta in Casso maybe has become too professionalized with many sites that are used often for each edition, and Athens in part a new terrain in a way. So I have the feeling I haven't really visited yet both sites, but I have the impression that in Athens this discontinuity between sites is really much stronger in a way. Even though if you have tried to use the existing institutional public network of institutions in order to support them in a way. So I was wondering, how did this process happen of choosing sites, be they institutional or I don't know, artist from spaces or whatever sites you were interested in?
So when we arrived in 2014, late 2014, so the crisis was not totally. It was the beginning. So, and we have since started with 2015 to experience this moment of very strong crisis of public institution, and basically the public institution were and still in a very difficult situation. So it's known also that in Greece there is also strong private institution, foundation, and it was very important for us to be very clear on how we identify the scene and the situation, and how we have to address our presence and also our project, because it's not just about Athens, it's about more general the art in the public institution, how art, contemporary art, should be a public facilities, a public common resource, and not. There is nothing against private collection or private foundation. On the contrary, it's very important to have a diversity, but it's also very important to address at one moment, very key moment in Europe, that this is good to sustain or to support private initiative, but not at the risk to make public institution disappearing and destroying. because that's what happened in Athens. All the public institutions are destroyed by the crisis. And so our aim has been to consider and to take care to see what are the key institutions in matter of contemporary art and how we can enter in conversation and try to start to work together. So the first has been the art school, the art school of Athens, in which we have organized our exchange with the artists, and we created soon in 2015 a studio in which we have invited artists to come inside visit and to also have practice, because for us it's an exhibition is not an administrative organization, is not just offices. Is making practice, is having a space, practicing with the artist, making works together and trying to construct, to draft things progressively together. And so we organize a studio in Polytechnion, in the center of Athens, in a very key and historical site, and there we have run this space for 1 year with intervention of artists, and this was open access to the student, professor of the school, and then we enter in conversation with the Museum of Contemporary Art, which was closed, which was unable to open. So since 3 years, because the museum has been renovated in a former beer factory, and since 3 years it was unable to open the space and install the collection. So we offer them to enter in a conversation, because our concern about public museum and public collection of contemporary art is a key question, and we really consider that our aim in Athens, in Greece, was to help and to make a statement on the national collection of contemporary art of Greece. It was a case, the museum was a case, because a museum that cannot open is a case to address. A collection that cannot be exhibited, it's also a case. So we both propose to the museum to work together to open the museum fully, the full building with Documenta, and at the same time to show the collection in Castle simultaneously, in order to have a kind of strong dialogue between the institution as the location and the content as the collection. And this we choose to give the most important space of Documenta, which is Friderizianum, to show the collection. But it's a very strong symbolic act to devoted the full Friderizianum to the collection of national contemporary art of Greece, could be another country, to a country during Documenta. It is a very strong statement to address, because it's also a way to reconsider the pyramidal organization of Documenta with the Friderizianum and the other location. And we wanted to redistribute the space, also the hierarchy and the organization of the narration of Documenta, in order to complexify the situation. And there is two very strong symbol going to Athens and redistributing the space in castle are two very strong statement of, it's not rhetoric, it's not the rhetoric. This has nothing to do with a rhetorical or a discourse. It is fact, act in space. It is what is our practice, basically.
Well, this makes me think of a writer who you know well, Henri Lefebvre, who has written a book called The Politics of Space, and he was writing about spatial acts, and I think there is something of this order, I mean, in the decisions that were made in Athens or in the fluxes between Athens and Castle, that is of this nature, in a way. It's well, this makes me think, well, we could talk about Documenta, I guess, for months, but it's also the occasion maybe to talk of another project which maybe less people have seen here, which is Soleil Politique that you mentioned before. And actually the catalogue of this exhibition, Soleil Politique, Political Sun, and one of the catalogues of Documenta is circulating in the audience, so we can have a look at those projects. Well, Soleil Politique also has something to do with this notion of spatial acts, because I will leave you to explain it better than me. How did you kind of transform the institution according to its neighborhood, its surrounding, be it topographical or historical?
In Bolzano, I was invited by a museum which is based in contemporary architecture, like a modernist cube made of glass and metal. And I really try to emphasize the museum as an object, the museum as the first object that you approach in this exhibition and inside which you enter, and try to underline this fact. In order to underline this fact, instead of developing the exhibition at the fourth floor, which was the top floor of the building, that were the space offered to me to use, I used the ground floor. And the ground floor, which was used to be the local or the lobby, but also the space in which activity addressed to audience and to local scene were organized, while the upper floor were more like noble floor, and a hierarchy was organized in this building from the ground floor to the top floor, and the top floor was a kind of the hyper noble space, like the penthouse. So I reversed the hierarchy of that space and used the ground floor and put the activities, the local activity, on the top floor. And this was a way also to consider the building in itself is unconscious organization, conscious or unconscious, because it's all the time very combined. And so the project has been based on this performative movement, a bit of the kind of we have done with moving to Athens. In that project, it was reversing the space in the museum. So, but this act in space is very important because, yeah, it's not rhetorical, it's not a theory, it's really a practice in space, and that's what I am believing in the field of art and plastic art, most particularly the quality of this practice is to use a certain language, and this language is based in space. So this project then developed a large reflection about the urbanism of Bolzano, a city that was also organized in the early 20th century by the fascists in Italy, who redesigned the extension of the city of the Middle Age village into a new modern rationalist organization based also on industrialization, and the legacy of this was also part of the exhibition. And yeah, so the practice in this exhibition has been tried to be exemplified in the exhibition itself, with work inside the exhibitions that proceed also and try to exemplify this question.
Well, as you said, space is a constraint that is very strong, and maybe stronger than time. It depends, but still, I think until now we have talked about temporary exhibitions, and also the gesture. Maybe it probably has some legacy. Something is left afterwards, after Documenta, to provoke some effects, hopefully on the local scene. Soleil Politique probably inspired a reflection on this building, on this city. But the question of time, I think it's also interesting in regard to another of your projects, which is Project Phalanstère, which this series of spatial acts in space build up in time. Maybe to negate this idea of temporary exhibition as eternal recommencement, in a way where you erase everything and you start again once more. And maybe that was a sort of attempt to, so that exhibition, work presentation leaves a trace that is also useful to the space and its users. So maybe a few words on the, maybe on the go of the project Phalanstère.
Is based on initiating invitation of artists that transforms the space while they are doing the exhibition into a space in which they can let some works after the exhibition. So the principle was that the artist was invited to contribute to build the art center, basically. That's so simple as that, because the art center was really a very simple space and needed to have a kind of configuration and to find some solution, and this process is more organic than planify, and the belief to produce more a project based on organicity than on planification was a kind of starting point, because this offer the possibility to adjust constantly with the reality of the users the transformation or the projects that inhabit and finally react with the inhabitant. It's really also a way to consider inhabiting as the most clear and relevant way to proceed architecturally. So the best architects are the one who is building his own house and progressively in time adjusting accordingly of the everyday life and going also through transformation a long time. So this project was based on trying to consider this as a possible way to program, and now it is still in action, but with other users. So this is something that also is not ending. It's something that continued to work after to be decided. So that was also it's very interesting as a process.
Well, we spoke about Documenta, but every institution has a tendency to ossify, maybe to when professionalizing too much. I think that is a sort of response to this natural decline of institutions.
There is something very interesting in this. It is the question of the archive, or of the how do you document an exhibition, or how do you start to archive or to document what you have done. And we are now at the moment in which we ask us, do we document the Documenta? And one of the answers in Athens are that some works will stay in, where they have been made, and the relation between the archive, more physically, more the documentation or the elements that go with the production, and the works are a bit a kind of ensemble of things that are not dissociate, and that we can consider as something that can stay longer, and as an object that can be considered to be given to the museum or to the art school in order to generate studies or and to continue to produce something. So that's also something that try not to obey to this distinction, to this category. You do an exhibition, it's a final product, and then after it's finished and you have the documentation, the archive, it's a final product, and then it's cut from this continuum, and then you adjust object like this. It's trying to reconsider the division of these categories and try to find a much more fluid way to approach the experience or the resource given by this experience.
Oh, it's extremely interesting. However, we have maybe open up to the audience for questions. Because the doors of the palace will close even if they are not here, as we understood with Stéphane Barbier-Bouvet. But so the microphone is yours.
I know that you are a large curatorial team in Documenta, so a lot of people in the curatorial team. That's right?
Yes, we are.
So my question is just technically, how do you parcel the different kind of spheres that you work on? So how do you come to a common decision regarding which artists to include, or how does it happen?
What is very special with this Documenta, and I think the wish of the director, the artistic director, to organize a group of curators that work with him in a more horizontal way. He's probably understandable through some legacy of methodologies that we can have several instances, like the open form of Oskar Henson. It's a Polish architect who developed his work in Poland, but in France also, and who initiate a process that try to reconfigure the composition in groups, like a collective composition. And this, for example, was based on not using speaking language, but exchanging in a group with other way, visual way, movement, or limiting or reducing some way to exchange, you produce a new way to compose things. So this has been a kind of way to try to work together, and another way is also to work like Hannah Halprin is also initiating. It's an American choreographer who initiate a bit the distinction, the switch from choreography to scoring. So from choreography to scoring, you reverse a little bit the situation in choreographing. You give a kind of precise instruction of what you have to do. It's really something that has to be followed and has to be strictly organized as follow like a script. And scoring is much more organizing a framework in which things happen, and to be quite strict in the frame that you construct between people, but then letting things producing themselves. So this is two instances. There is much other, because in matter of music we were also very inspiring. I brought some my knowledge in music through composition, and the same for the scratch orchestra, or Cornelis Cardio is also bringing this way to reconsider the composition, or the role of the players, the musician, and the audience. And so we try to do that, so it was basically very progressive. So we came with resource, each of us, and the first composition is for sure the people that Adam Szymczyk has gathered around him, because this play a key role, because we are very different and we brought each of us very different resources. And so this is already something. And with this, we broke things, and things were included and combined progressively in a very long process. And so that's how it happened also the situation in a very long process, and hopefully we were not skills in the same way. We were not doubling things, so we have contributed differently for each of us, basically.
Yeah, that was also my impression, that each curator has his very specific voice inside the exhibition. This was my personal experience.
Yeah, after that we also experienced the lose of the voice. Because this is very important, to lose also a very personal voice, and trying to really experience the collective process. And so, but this sometimes succeeds, sometimes fails. I don't think what I think is successful in this Documenta is that there is a very strong heterogeneity in what is going on, and sometimes there is really ruptures. There is really also bad confrontation, probably. because we give importance to the heterogeneity and not to the not caring too much that everything will be well adjusted, because if you go in that way, you start to build like a bouquet, and the bouquet, it was totally not the problem. You know, we don't make flower bouquet, and it was much more trying to introduce element, energy in which they will then produce themselves things that we are not even ourselves responsible. So, because you have to also admit the automatic composition of any event. I mean, like, one more time I quote Marie, because Marie has given a kind of very interesting instance, but when you do a film, you have at one point the film is produced itself, because the material start to produce things alone, and you have just to take care to drive and to frame correctly, but things are very alive, and I think we were trying to be attentive of that things are not blocked, not restricted, but instead just produce a maximum of possibilities.
Thank you. I think you've done a great job.
Thank you.
Can you say a few words about this project you had in the Archaeological Museum of Pires?
Yeah. This is a project that a bit, you know, it's very, I will say something very contradictory of what I just said, because I was quite happy with the collective experience, because after 10 years of running an art center alone, I really needed to have this collective process. It was really fantastic, but at one point I needed to develop something special myself, and it's a bit because I think I'm not fully into the belief everything should be collective. I don't think so. I think the diversity is also very important. It's like I don't believe that everything should be democratic. I don't think it's wrong to say that democracy can be applied for everything. It's really wrong, because some processes are very like a dictatorship. And in this practice, there is some processes that are very dictatorial and not at all a matter of democracy. So, but this project, I needed to do something which was an experimentation, and I in a way, tried to prolong an experience I have initiated, which is based on the performance exhibition. And I wanted to use the context of Documenta as a possibility to involve artists that are available, because it's also a very great possibility to have about 100 artists around you that you can also offer to contribute and regularly meet them. So I invited about 13 artists to make an experience of a work which would be sustained by one body. So it's a very, very simple experience of a collective exhibition at the scale of one body. Instead of using one space and using a room, it's a body which is the medium of the contribution of the different artists. And each movement is a contribution of different artists, 13, and I asked them to not use any accessories, nothing. It should be really reduced to movement. And they gave me 13 contributions. We have 13 contributions, and these contributions are activated. I worked with a choreographer and 3 dancers, and they are activated in the order of they want, because I wanted also to have an open structure that not oblige the performer to perform in a certain order, but they can perform as they want, and also due that they are free, they can do the same or do different. So it produces a constant different combination, and this reduced to this 13 movements that construct a kind of choreography is given in a museum archaeological in Piraeus, where I really found a context that also resonates with this movement and body, because this museum has a beautiful sculpture and the presence of this frozen movement, because the antiques Greek sculpture are also very sophisticated in matter of movement, frozen movement or language movement, because everything is very codified, and so the visitor enters this museum and just meet situation produced by the dancer. So there is no way to identify each gesture, because I also reduce the information to the minimum. You just meet the dancer in the exhibition rooms. There is different rooms, so you have to visit the space, and suddenly you encounter the dancer, and they are moving constantly, and you are not informed by each movement, because I wanted really to underline the importance to not to try to decode too quickly the works. And I show in Castle the scores. The 13 movements are provided by each artist as a score. So the score is given in Castle. So it's also a way to really make a statement about that. It was a bit long, sorry. But
well, we will have to finish here with this intervention. Maybe just a 2-minute break.